Why don't you start?
Ross Haven with Caithness Energy. We have a modern power plant in Yaphank, New York that Richie helped select when he was at LIPA. That produces 21% of the on-island generation and 11% of all the power consumed on Long Island.
Mike Volz, Director of Energy Efficiency and Renewables for PSEG Long Island. We have financial incentives to encourage homes and businesses to become more efficient and use more renewable power.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Clinton Lemmer. I'm head of development at Deepwater Wind. We built the first offshore wind farm in America, which is off the coast of Rhode Island. We are days away from that project starting commercial operations, and we are working on bringing the second offshore wind farm in America and the first truly utility scale project right here in Long Island. We're very excited to be making that project happen here.
And I'm Chris Kavanaugh with National Grid. How are you all? Our job is to put together, you've heard about the Reforming the Energy Vision concept in New York State. Well, Long Island's going to have the first rev projects for gas in the entire state, first and only so far.
Thank you. So what we're going to try to do, before I set the table, is we're going to have each of our panelists give a short presentation, maybe 5 to 7, 8 minutes. You're going to have to stand up and come here only to project, because I see some of the people in the back. It's hard to hear, right, Ron? Hard to hear. So we have to do. I can project my voice, but if you guys could do that, that would be helpful. So here's the challenge on Long Island. It's a very different challenge than what we had when LIPA was first created as a electric utility on Long Island. A lot of people forget, and some people are new to the island, that the island, for most of its history, was powered by the Long Island Lighting Company, LILCO. Ultimately, the Long Island Power Authority was created by Governor Mario Cuomo and the state legislature, and LIPA's goal initially was actually to close Shoreham and decommission it, which had been the biggest utility project and controversy in our history. Whatever you might want to read about today pales in comparison to the Shoreham controversy, which lasted for over 2 decades on Long Island. And not being critical of it, but that project ultimately did not operate. It was totally built. Of course, you know, you go out to Shoreham today in Wading River, you can see the plant there. It's on the books for about $6 billion plus, but it never operated for commercial purposes, and was the first commercially licensed nuclear power plant to be decontaminated or decommissioned in the United States. And so when you go out there, you can go on the property, you can go up to that project, you can go inside of it. We've all been in there, well, some of us many times. It's just a fascinating, if you have nothing to do, it's a great thing to see. It's kind of a moment in history on Long Island. You walk inside, the clocks are stopped at a certain point, right, Walter? Then we took a couple of tours there. There are cigarette butts in ashtrays. There are newspapers on the desk dated the day that the plant was formally closed. It did operate at low power testing at 5%, which is why it had to be decontaminated. The cost for decommissioning was over $300 million, believe it or not. And the fuel was actually removed and barged down to other nuclear plants in Pennsylvania. And the low-level radioactive material actually was buried, I think, in Barnwell in the Carolinas, if I'm not mistaken, Stan. It was one of the last shipments ever to be gotten rid of. Otherwise, we would have still had it out there. In fact, a proposal to keep it there and bury it in casks, which we promptly turned down. But that project was at the center of Long Island's energy. And just to bring it forward, that project took so much time and resources that not much else was done to provide energy to Long Island. And when the Long Island Power Authority finally acquired the Long Island Lighting Company in 1998, first announced, by the way, in 1997, And I won't go into all the politics of that because that would take days. But the fact is that we all thought we had plenty of power and electricity to keep the lights on. Lo and behold, a couple of years later, we found out that wasn't true. We found out that the grid, the system, was aged and deteriorated, and that we did not have enough resources to keep the lights on. And we had a summer in 2001 where we had a heat wave. 1 week in August, the temperatures were over 100 degrees for 5 days in a row. And we struggled to keep the lights on. Our last day of the heat wave, and I was there, I was head of LIPA, we had just owned the system for a couple of years. We were in deficit 500 megawatts on a Thursday morning of the 5-day heat wave, and had to get Long Island in an emergency situation. We called companies like Cablevision, universities like Hofstra and Stony Brook, and large businesses like Computer Associates to get their employees home and leave the house early. We opened up, the governor at the time was Governor Pataki, was very helpful. We opened up all the beaches and parks for free. We encouraged people to not use their appliances. It was a real struggle. And that, by the way, just to point out that struggle was more focused on Long Island, but the whole state faced real energy shortages. As a result, we got involved in building new resources and new projects to keep the lights on. We did it on an emergency basis. We got 11 small generating plants built from the Rockaways out to Greenport and in between in literally less than 3 years, which is an incredible thing when you think about projects today. And we also built the 2 cables, the cross-sound cable, which connected Long Island, Shoreham, to Connecticut, which was vigorously opposed by Connecticut, the Attorney General. Stan's friend Blumenthal is now a senator. And the Neptune cable, which connects, if I remember correctly, from Sayreville, New Jersey, under the Atlantic Ocean, 68 miles, under the Wantua Parkway into a converter station up in Wantua. And amazing, when we tried to build that line, we were told, well actually I thought, how are you ever going to build a line 68 miles under the ocean? It was done. It's operating today. And we also built, as Ross pointed out, the Caithness plant. I'm very proud that was the last project that we did at LIPA to build that plant. Originally I was opposed to it, as Ross knows, but we were convinced that it was the right thing to do, and it was, and it is one of the most, if not the most efficient plant in the state. It operates over 300 megawatts. And it provides the power, obviously critically important, especially during the summer. But here's the point. All of this was done because there was an emergency. And we didn't have much time to deal with wind, although as part of the process, after all this was built, we did venture into the offshore wind area. We did put up a few windmills on farms on the east end. And we started energy efficiency, Mike, in a program called Eli, not named after Eli Manning. I am a Giant fan, Vinny. And not my son, who's 8.5 years old, Eli, but Efficiency Long Island, which was the first broad-based energy efficiency program. And we also started Long Island's first solar roof program called Solar Pioneers. And it doesn't sound like a lot now. And I have to give a lot of credit to LIPA and PSEG for where they brought solar energy on Long Island. I think there are about 30,000 some odd roofs. Well, I remember we hit 1,000 solar roofs in a roof in Northport. It was the biggest thing ever. So one of the things that we had the luxury at that time of people being afraid that the lights would go out. And I can tell you, there is nothing worse than having the lights go out because you don't have enough electricity. You're skewered, and the utility's reputation and credibility is done, and the devastation to the economy is unheard of. If businesses and people don't know that the lights are reliable, and that when you go home, you turn on your TV or your computer or your business, all the machinery you use, we take it for granted. Let's be honest. You go home at night, turn on the TV, it goes on. You never thought about it. But back in the early 2000s, there were real questions on many days as to whether that switch would work. We're not in that position today, yet. But we have to make sure that we maintain and upgrade the island in terms of resources, both on the transmission and the generation and renewable area to keep the lights on. We all have wonderful ideas. We can hear a lot of them today. But the bottom line is that if you don't keep the lights on, the economy on Long Island is in big trouble. And I will predict today that sometime not so far away, everyone right now is very comfortable, so will we in 1998. And the bottom line is that 3 years later, the world changed. The economy took off, the recession ended, and the world changed for us. And some changes will happen again. We are in a different era, newer technologies, more efficient appliances. So it's a lot different. So the question is, what does Long Island need to do to maintain a reliable electric system? And I think there are three things that I think we want to hear from our panelists. Number one, we want to hear about fossil and other resources that are traditional. We do have some large baseload plants that are very old on Long Island. Northport, Port Jefferson, Barrett are very old and they are operating. And frankly, on a hot summer day in particular, if those plants didn't operate, we would not be able to keep the lights on no matter what else we did. But they're very old. Northport is the newest plant, and I think the last unit was built in the 70s. I know my friend Matt Cordero's here has done a great job on the board of LIPA. He was back at Loco in those days and can tell you a lot of that history. And Barrett in Island Park is the oldest non-coal operating plant in the state. And so, no matter how much we want to do offshore, energy efficiency, gas efficiency, we still have to have some traditional generation to keep the lights on. So, challenge number one, what should that be? Should it be Caithness 2, another version of Caithness? Should it be repowering of Northport or Barrett? What about Port Jefferson? Should we keep it open? And what about smaller generation? And what about increased and upgraded transmission on the grid? So that's number one in terms of future projects. Number two, what about renewables? We are becoming a leader in renewables. What works? How about offshore wind? We tried it once. Unfortunately, we almost got there, but not quite. But now in what Clint is talking about, Deepwater, they've done a fabulous job. And what about wind and offshore wind? Can we afford it? Is it viable? How long does it take to get in there? And can we depend upon it to provide resources to keep the lights on? How much? And then energy efficiency. And I think that Mike is to be congratulated, as is Chris and National Grid, for leading the way on energy efficiency. I don't think people realize all of the great things that we're doing on Long Island. Some of us are participating in it. We need more. How much will energy efficiency be? Can we put enough energy efficiency in there to maybe reduce the need for other resources like power plants and transmission lines? How does that all work on both the electric side and the gas side as well? And these are real challenges that are very important. LIPA and PSEG are working on an integrated resource plan, which hopefully will be ready before the end of the century. It's been delayed a few times. We're hoping to see it maybe early next year. What is that going to include? What are the resources that we need on Long Island to keep the lights on? Let me conclude by saying one more thing, and that's infrastructure. This presidential election was a pretty wild election, and there's a lot of talk right now about improving the infrastructure in the nation. roads, bridges, airports, but you very rarely hear anything about the electric infrastructure, the energy infrastructure, the gas infrastructure, which probably is the most important infrastructure we have. If we needed to do without certain roads, we could do it. I don't think we could survive without electricity and natural gas and keeping the lights on. Our infrastructure is aging. And in New York State, I can tell you, as former head of the New York Power Authority, and Tom DeJays is here, he's worked with me, and a lot of others, that I looked at the infrastructure in the state, especially the transmission lines that carry the bulk electricity to our area and to other areas around the state. And if you ever took a look at it, you'd be horrified. A lot of it is old. Go upstate, Tom, I remember we went up there, old wooden poles that are 100 years old are standing there holding the wires, carrying the electricity that ultimately should come, some of it at least, to Long Island. What about the aging infrastructure? If we're gonna spend billions of dollars on roads and bridges, what about the energy system? Why isn't anyone talking about it? And should we be talking about it? So those are some of the issues and questions that are out there. And what I'd like to do now is turn, I think we'll go in order of sitting. Ross Ames, Ross, then Mike, then Clint, then Chris, in that order. 5 to 7 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes, and then we'll do some questions. Thank you. Ross?
Thank you, Richie.
In order for us to get that work going,
I'm going to come over here so I can sort of talk this way so I don't bother them too much. Yeah, I understand. Okay. I have a presentation which we're going to try to follow.
big part of this aid front.
The questions Richie raised are really key questions for this panel and for anybody serious about energy on Long Island. And get it up. What do you do in energy resource planning? What are your goals? And we could all debate, sort of what technologies are good or bad, but are these the right goals? Are reasonable rates the right goal? Reliability of supply, we just spoke about that. Environmental goals.
Ross, you got to speak even louder.
But they're saying to me if I speak, there's some more seats up here if you can.
I've written a white paper.
See, I'm going to compete with people over there.
You're coming up with ideas that are too vague, too broad, too general.
Reliability of supply, environmental goals, greenhouse gas reduction, NOx, CO, volatile organic compounds, PM 2.5 reductions, and goals on protecting our water supply. And there's two kinds on Long Island which are very precious and often not spoken about. One is our aquifer under Long Island, which is a sole source aquifer. If we lose that aquifer, we don't have drinking water. And the second is our fisheries and the effect of our existing plants on our fisheries and the Long Island Sound and the Western Bays. So I'll talk briefly about these topics. So you probably all can't read this, but I'll tell you this. Richie already spoke about it. 2/3 of Long Island's generation is over 40 years old. 2/3. Now you think about it, if you drive a 1978 car, what technology was in that car? You didn't even have a phone back then. Think about the technology that are in these old power plants. They don't have computerized data highways like new power plants. It's very, very different. And these old plants are expensive to operate. They are produce much greater amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. I'll show you that. They are harmful to aquatic life. I'll show you that. And they can't respond to fluctuating levels of supply. So they don't help integrate renewables into the grid. So I agree with Richie, those plants have to be replaced. And in most parts of the country, they are being replaced. So for instance, in New York City, there are 5 new modern power plants. And think how tough it is to site power plants in New York City. Long Island only has 1 new power plant of that type, which is Cape Long Island. So we allowed, when Cape Long Island came on, it allowed the retirement of 2 very obsolete plants, Glenwood Landing and Far Rockaway. That alone saved Long Island ratepayers $250 million because they no longer had to pay for those plants and the taxes went down to the farm. So what happens though is because Long Island has such an inefficient fleet, more than half the power serving Long Island every day comes in on cables. And the cables, people think cables are great, we should just build more cables. It's very interesting when you look at the figures. Cable availability, Northport to Norwalk, 79%, 40% in 2010, its worst year. Cross-town cable, 94%, 76% availability in 2014. And Neptune was 71%. Just to give you a feel for it, Caithness, Long Island, our new plant on Long Island, has an availability over 99%. So my theory is the cables are fine, but you don't want to depend upon them too much because they are not necessarily as reliable as you might think. And secondly, you're moving tax revenues, economic development, and jobs to New Jersey and Connecticut. And Richie talked about this. He talked about the fact that after World War II, the GIs came home, Levittown was booming, we were building new power plants. Richie, you're exactly right. This is Northport 4, 1978. The last plant built. And then this gap here is really when LIPA was in trouble, when LILCO was in trouble with Shoreham. And so the state came in and built the plant in Holbrook, the Flint plant, and there was one other plant built. And then finally, Richie came in and built all these peakers. And finally, the first modern plant in 2009 since 1978. So it shows you Long Island really had a serious gap in its planning for integrating new generation. And if you look at the resources, I said 39% of it's the old steam units, 25% the old peakers. That's over 2/3 of Long Island's electricity are from plants that are 40 years old. And, you know, other parts of the country, other parts of the world, you talk about infrastructure, you know, LaGuardia Airport, other things, that's where we are. And there's only 5% of Long Island has one modern plant, 5% of the installed capacity. And so what does it mean? Long Island actually generates about 53% of the power on island, and every day about 47% of what we use is coming in over cables from upstate New York, from Connecticut, from New Jersey. So let's talk about now meeting some of the governor's goals on greenhouse gas emissions and what does it mean for planning. Well, the governor wants to have a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And to meet the goals, obviously you want to increase renewables, you want to add distributed generation energy efficiency, and I would say you have to add clean, modern, combined cycle plants, and I'll show you why. And the clean, modern plants, as Neil Lewis said when he testified before the town of Brookhaven, once Caithness 2 begins to operate, it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions 7 times the amount being achieved by all of Long Island's ongoing clean energy programs. And it's going to be up about 1 million tons of CO2 reduction a year because a new plant, whether it's Caithness 2 or any other plant, will displace the use of the old plants. And the old plants are producing 50% more CO2 for every kilowatt hour. So this shows you what, we did a study of the tons that Caithness 2 or a modern plant, Power Barrett, anything else, 1 million tons a year, which is giving me the hope. And this is a very interesting comparison, Richie. If you wanted to have the same amount of CO2 reduction from fossil, you need 750 megawatts of fossil, 1,200 megawatts of solar, and 425 megawatts of offshore wind for the same amount of CO2 reduction. And let's look at the cost. The cost of doing that, you can see the cost difference. And I'll make these slides available to people if they want to see them. But you can see the renewables are more expensive, back to a reasonable rate question. So the governor's goal also was 50% renewables by 2030. And how do we meet that? That's a huge, huge commitment. And the one thing that's clear, and Caithness has one of the largest wind farms in the world in Oregon, 850 megawatts on 32,000 acres of land. So we're very familiar with operating wind machines. And we know the variableness of the wind resource. We have good years and we have bad years. And even as Clint will say, wind has about a 30 to 50% capacity factor at best. So there's going to be times when the wind's not blowing. At night, the sun doesn't shine. In the winter, the capacity factor of solar on Long Island is 2%. So you have to have something else that can back it up. So I postulate that what you really need to do is have a plan that can quickly react to changes in load efficiently and cleanly. And that's what a new fossil plant can do. Let me go on and then we'll get to it. And this shows you the huge reduction in air emissions between an old plant and a new plant. And graphically, you see a 98% reduction in NOx, 90% in CO, and it's making the plants much cleaner, the atmosphere. This shows you graphically the profile of what it does. I'm going to keep moving fast. Skip it. Okay, water. I want to spend just 2 more minutes on water. The new plants on Long Island use what's called air-cooled condensing. And that is like on your car, you have a radiator, it's actually a convector moving heat away from the engine block. A new plant has a closed system for makeup water. So we use the equivalent of 3 garden hoses of makeup water to produce 10%, 11% of Long Island's electricity. So that's very efficient going on. And this compares the water use of a new efficient plant per megawatt hour to some of the old plants. It's enormous wastefulness of the Long Island aquifer. But even more importantly, look what it's doing to Long Island's fisheries. It's killing 8 billion, Northport, 8 billion fish a year. Annual numbers, these are from the DEC. Port Jeff killing 1 billion fish a year. And it's enormous. That's why the fishery's been suffering. Because these plants are pulling in water from the Long Island Sound, from the western bays, going through these screens, and it's really hurting the fish resource. So PSE&G claims that we don't need any more power plants until 2028. We don't need new power plants. We need to replace what we've got with better power plants, is what I'm saying. With cleaner ones, renewables, and cleaner fossil. So I'm on my last one, Richie. So my theory is on answering your first question about what's the role of fossil generation going forward. I think we need to have fossil generation going forward. That would help integrate renewables and help clean up the environment and provide reasonable rates for the consumers. Thank you.
All right, Mike Volz from PSEG.
All right, good morning, everyone. We heard earlier today about 2001, there was 500 megawatts needed in a very short period of time. We're not in that situation right now. The economy on Long Island typically grows about 1.5% per year. That's what it's forecasted, which is a good thing. We hear earlier today about all the downtown redevelopments, and we're at a Vision Long Island conference. Obviously, we want growth. We want people to build new homes, develop downtowns, etc. But we want to be able to do that in a clean and environmentally sustainable way. So one of the beauties of energy efficiency and renewables for that matter is, unlike the power plant where you get a big chunk of 300 megawatts or 500 megawatts at a time, everyone who invests in their home with new appliances, new lighting, maybe puts solar on the roof, it's a very gradual, incremental, year after year improvement in efficiency. So we can really meet the load growth. Essentially what's happening in the forecasted future, and it could change, the economy could grow faster, but we grow by about 1.5% per year. Our energy efficiency programs reduce load, reduce customers' consumption by 1.3% per year. So we're essentially holding the load flat while still allowing economic growth and new homes and new appliances. So it's very efficient and cost effective. It's good for the environment. It's basically doing more with less. So energy efficiency can really be a big part of meeting, and as Richie said, the ELI, when it was first announced about 10 years ago, Efficiency Long Island had a goal of achieving 500 megawatts over 10 years. We're well on our way. We're now in about the 8th year. We've exceeded 300 megawatts of peak demand reduction from energy efficiency. We've also had about 200 megawatts of solar PV added during that time. Right now there are over 35,000 homes and businesses on Long Island that have solar PV on the roof, and we're adding 1,000 a month. So Richie mentioned how exciting it was to hit 1,000 solar PV roofs. It took probably 5, 6, 7 years to get to 1,000 homes. We're adding 1,000 a month. So it's really tremendous, and it's clean, there's no fuel burning, it's clean, efficient, renewable, and it'll probably last 20 years. So just wanted to touch on those things. I'll be brief in the commercial market. So obviously we support homeowners. We have some contractors that do a lot of work in the homes, insulating homes, putting in new appliances, but also in businesses. We want to support our businesses, which helps create jobs and helps the economy. So I just want to touch upon two large businesses, one of which was completed about a year ago, and one which is just coming to a conclusion now, where CA Technologies, big business, one of the largest employers on Long Island, they wanted to upgrade their efficiency of their main campus. So they worked with us, and we provided financial incentives to improve. Basically, we did a comprehensive upgrade of their facilities, including a new chiller plant, new heating plant, HVAC, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, all new efficient lighting, both indoor and outdoor, and some natural gas upgrades. As a result of that, CA Technologies is saving $275,000 each year on their electric bill. So that money can be used to reinvest in equipment, hire more people. The simple payback was about 1 year. The other beauty of energy efficiency, it tends to be a very quick payback, good return on the investment. Right now, almost any business that has traditional fluorescent lighting or metal halide lighting, or in some cases in homeowners, incandescent lighting, the payback on upgrading to LED is so fast. Within 1 to 2 years, sometimes less, you'll get your money back, and the lighting fixtures will last 20 years. So it's really a great investment to upgrade your lighting. Also air conditioning, heating systems, etc. I just want to touch on another facility. One of the largest manufacturing facilities to be built on Long Island is a place called Amneal Pharmaceuticals. It's just coming to a completion out in Yaphank right now. They're building a very large, I don't have the square footage here, but it's a very, very large facility. We're in the process of finalizing their rebates for financial incentives. We heard earlier at a panel discussion I went to today about geothermal heating and cooling systems, one of the most efficient heating and cooling systems that anyone can install, whether it's a home or a business. Amneal Pharmaceuticals installed geothermal heating and cooling, high efficiency variable speed drive chillers, water source heat pumps, which ties into their geothermal system, high efficiency fan coils, improved roof insulation, LED lighting throughout, which I just mentioned, occupancy sensors that when people leave a room or a space, they reduce the electricity, and they installed solar PV on the roof. So highly efficient. The facility is going to save about $400,000 a year, which is estimated to be about 27% less than a traditional design of a similar manufacturing plant. So we work closely with them, and as I mentioned earlier, we're very happy to work with any businesses or homeowners on Long Island that want to upgrade efficiency or install solar PV. We think it's good for the development, and it's good for the environment, and it's good for our economy. So it's really a win-win situation. With that, I'll turn it over to Clint to talk about offshore wind.
Well, thanks everyone. My name is Clint Plummer. I'm the head of development at Deepwater Wind. We are the nation's leading offshore wind development company. And I want to spend a couple of minutes with you today talking about the state of the offshore wind industry globally, talk about where it is here in the U.S., and then I want to talk about why it's important for us at the Vision Long Island Conference. But before we get into that, I want to thank Richie and the rest of my panelists. The folks that are up here, the companies and the individuals, are people that are in the business of the future. And if there's one thing people can say about Richie Kessel, it's that you've been a leader in energy and thinking about the future of this industry for your entire career. It's been an inspiration to a lot of us, and it's because of him and the type of work that he's done that Long Island is poised to be a national leader in thinking about energy differently. Now, Richie laid out 3 concepts that are very important concepts. He talked about the source of power generation, he talked about transmission, and he talked about renewables. Those are all concepts that are critical to maintaining a reliable and clean electricity system. Governor Cuomo has also launched what's called the Renewing the Energy Vision Initiative, and what's so fascinating about that and what allows that to transform New York into a national and a global leader is that we start to think about how those 3 things blend together and how we can use one to offset the need for the other. My ultimate pitch in this discussion is that offshore wind and clean energy technologies like it fit into the grid in a different way. They fit in a way that allows us in certain places to use renewables to offset the need to build other forms of new generation. That's the premise. We're going to come back to that. Now, let me talk a little bit about offshore wind. What you see here is the picture of America's first offshore wind farm. We built this project. I wrote the original proposal for this project back in the early part of 2008. It took my company over 8.5 years and 26 different federal, state, and local approvals to develop this project, and we are days away from flipping the switch and turning it on. It consists of 5 wind turbine generators that are located about 19 miles off the coast of mainland of Rhode Island, about 19 miles east of Montauk Point. Now, Block Island is the first in the U.S., and it's core to how we think about building out this industry. Could I have the next slide, please? A bit of background on who we are. Deepwater Wind has been around for about a decade. The company was founded right here on Long Island to focus on using new technology from Europe in the form of offshore wind to help lower energy costs and produce more of our electricity right here at home. We're owned by a New York City-based investment company called D.E. Shaw that has $37 billion in assets under management, so we're very well capitalized. In addition to having built the first offshore wind farm in America, we also have leases with the federal government to build out larger utility-scale offshore wind farms in 2 other regions in the country. The first is here in the Northeast in a project that we call Deepwater One. This is a regional energy center that we envision building out in phases of 1 to 200 megawatts at a time to serve regional markets, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and especially Long Island. In addition to that, we also own a lease here in the Mid-Atlantic that we intend to build out using the same strategy, 1 to 200 megawatts at a time, to serve Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. That's one of the beauties of offshore wind, because you're putting out wind turbines offshore. It's very modular. We can install these things in small increments once the first infrastructure has been established. Let's go to the next slide. Now, we're the first to do this in the U.S. Block Island is the first project to be built, but this is far from the first time this has been done. The Europeans started building offshore wind back in 1991. The first project was built off the coast of Denmark. It's 25 years old. It's still operating today. Now, over the course of the last 25 years, the Europeans have invested billions and billions both in projects and in the technology. So as of today, there's over 11,000 megawatts of offshore wind spinning, producing power in Europe. There's literally thousands of these turbines in the water today. It's become a massive $20 billion a year global industry, and that's just in Europe. In Asia, China built their first offshore wind farm in 2008. Japan built their first offshore wind farm in 2011, interestingly, to replace the Fukushima plant. This is becoming a massive global industry, and nowhere in the world is the opportunity larger than here in the U.S., and particularly in the U.S. Northeast. Now, I mentioned that the Europeans have been putting billions of dollars into that technology. If you go to the next slide, please, I want to show what this means. Offshore wind started using land-based turbines with marinization packages. Put special paint on them so they don't rust and protect the sensitive components. But over the last decade, the machines have evolved and become completely separate technologies. These are machines that are designed from the ground up to be operated in the harshest marine environments. And because of that, they've become very specialized. They've grown a lot larger. I want to point out the difference between a typical onshore turbine, which is about 350 feet tall, about the same size as the Statue of Liberty, and the modern offshore wind turbines. So the turbine that we're using for our Block Island project is about 600 feet tall. It's nearly twice the size of a conventional onshore wind turbine. And just for a frame of reference for how large these machines are, we can fit 3 Airbus A380s just within the rotor swept area of the machines. And that's important when we think about how we power our cities and how we power places like Long Island, because the larger the machines, the more efficient they are, the more cost effective they are. So we have the ability as this technology grows to be able to deliver more clean, cost-effective energy in a very non-controversial way, because we can now put these machines very far offshore where they're 15, 20, 30 miles away where people aren't looking at them. That's technology today. Let's go to the next slide. The opportunity here in the Northeast is special. It's unique anywhere in the world because we've got a confluence of three factors that make offshore wind not only a valuable technology, but a really integral part of the energy system. First, we have demand. The U.S. East Coast is host to about 20% of the entire population just in the area between Washington, D.C. and Boston. Boston-Washington corridor has some of the most dense population of anywhere in the world, and it's also got some of the oldest electricity infrastructure of anywhere in the world. It's difficult and it's expensive to build any form of new power generation in that corridor because of how densely populated it is and because of how little land there is. And also because of congestion and trying to bring in new electricity resources from other places or new fuel sources like natural gas. In addition to the demand, we also have one of the best wind resources anywhere in the world. Meteorologists refer to this area, the coastal plain off of the Boston-Washington corridor, as the Saudi Arabia of wind, because the wind is so abundant, it's so powerful, and this is important because it's so consistent. Offshore wind works on a fundamentally different set of physics than does onshore wind. So because of that, it's very, very consistent over the course of the year, and it also tends to be very coincident with when people use power. As any sailor will tell you, the winds tend to pick up in the late morning, early afternoon hours offshore, and they can continue through the early evening hours. That means that our wind farms are going to produce power at exactly the same time that people need it. Not at night, but during the middle of the day. The last asset that we have is we've got what's called the Outer Continental Shelf. This is a geological feature that extends off the entire Northeast about 200 miles offshore. That means that it's very cost effective to build offshore wind, much more so than in any other place in the world, because we've got this very shallow offshore plateau on which we can construct wind farms. Our Block Island wind farm was built in 100 feet of water. Compare that with the U.S. Gulf of Mexico, where our country builds hundreds of platforms for oil and gas production every year. And those platforms are in literally thousands of feet of water. The president of my company had previously been the chief operating officer for the largest construction company offshore in the world. And his last big project before our Block Island project was an oil platform in 8,000 feet of water. So the differences here and the asset that we have and the ability to build here is just staggeringly different. And it makes this region one of the best places in the world to build offshore wind. It also means that offshore wind can be an extraordinarily cost-effective part of that energy. Let's go to the next slide. Now, our company thinks that we should be using this technology to help solve real problems. That there have been various proposals for offshore wind out there, and for example, Ritchie's original proposal was designed to help solve that problem of Long Island's need for new sources of electricity. We think the same thing. Our Block Island project was designed to serve two purposes. First, it was to help solve a public policy goal that the state of Rhode Island had established to get to 15% clean energy. And number two, it was designed to help solve a problem that Block Island had. So Block Island is a small island about 13 miles off the coast of Rhode Island. It has a year-round population of about 1,000 people that peaks to about 25,000 people during the middle of the summer. It's powered by an old, dirty diesel-electric power plant that burns 1 million gallons of diesel a year and charges their ratepayers 60 cents a kilowatt hour. Our project, a 30 megawatt pilot scale offshore wind farm, was able to plug in on Block Island to deliver 10 times more energy than the island needed and save ratepayers on Block Island 40% on their annual energy bills. We did that by building these 5 wind turbines off the southeast coast of the island and joining that with a cable connection back to the mainland, so that when the wind farm is producing more power than the island needs, the excess energy flows back to the mainland, and when the island needs more power than the wind farm is making, it pulls it from the mainland. So it's a great symbiosis. I'm also very proud to say that this was a partnership. National Grid is our partner and actually built and owns the transmission line that runs from Block Island out to the mainland. Let me just walk you through a couple of elements of the construction of Block Island, because they're big, cool pictures I have to show you. So back in the summer of 2015, we installed the very first offshore wind foundations anywhere in the U.S. This is what's called a jacket-type foundation. It's basically a 4-legged structure, like a big chair or a bar stool that sits on the ocean floor and then is nailed in place with piles that are driven down through the legs. We built that. We built 5 of those, partially in Rhode Island, partially in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico, and we put literally hundreds of people to work doing that. Let's go to the next slide. Earlier this year, we installed the submarine cable that connects the wind farm to Block Island and Block Island back to the mainland. Next slide. And then later this summer, in August of this year, we installed all 5 of the wind turbines. We had to bring a large vessel over from Europe because we don't have any of those here in the U.S. But what's fascinating about this is 8 years of planning, and it took us 18 days to install wind turbines. So our business is all about logistics and planning, and we had a series of ports and feeder barges. But in 18 days, we went from having no wind turbines to having all 5 of those installed and sending the ship back to Europe. And that's critically important because that ship cost us $250,000 a day just to rent. So there's big economies of scale. Block Island's a small project. It's an expensive project because it was built at a very small scale. As we get larger, as these projects scale up, we see a very clear path to offshore wind being not only cost competitive with other renewable resources, but being the most cost-effective new source of energy supply for densely populated coastal places like Hawaii. Now, no place is this more apparent. No place faces the same type of challenges that Block Island did as much as the South Fork of Long Island. Long Island's South Fork is densely populated, it's difficult and expensive to build everything else there, it's got no connection to the gas system, and it's got a large and growing need for electric power. About a year and a half ago, PSEG Long Island put out an RFP asking for new sources of power generation to help meet that need. And I just want to point out, the difference between the rest of Long Island and the South Fork is that we've got this steady, continuous load growth. You've got over 100 megawatts of new load that's expected to come online in the next 10 years on the South Fork. We looked at that and we saw an opportunity to demonstrate that offshore wind can be cost competitive with new fossil-fired generation in certain places. Let's go to the next slide. So the South Fork is a difficult, it's a complicated place. It's very densely populated. I'm going to skip the detail here and give you the high points. Let's hit the next slide. That's just so we proposed a South Fork wind farm as the next step in the development following the Block Island project. This is a 90 megawatt wind farm that's designed to plug in and deliver energy directly to the heart of the South Fork load farm. With this project, we'll be able to deliver clean, cost-effective energy right into downtown East Hampton from a site that's over 30 miles offshore. You won't be able to see the wind turbines from any of Long Island's beaches. This is the future of energy for Long Island and the rest of the country. Life has done their analysis on this, and what they've said publicly is that when they compared all the other options, including fossil-fired power plants built on the South Fork to serve the same needs, they found that our project, taking into consideration the cost of building new fossil generation there, taking into consideration the cost of building other renewables elsewhere on the island, that the combined benefits of using offshore wind both to serve the need for renewables and the need for new power generation, make this the most cost-effective solution for solving these problems. And we see that as the future of how we bring cost-effective energy. When we look at all the things that we have to do to comply with renewable energy goals and with the need for reliability, we see that offshore wind can be a very cost competitive and in fact the cheapest source of new energy in certain places. Thank you very much.
All right, Chris is going to speak, then we'll take a few questions.
I'll be very quick. We can hold up the slides because I know I'm standing between the two of you and lunch. You have the slide up? No. Oh, it's Second. Well, I can actually get started while he's pulling up the slides. Just had Chris Cowder with National Grid. You know, we in Long Island here have really been at the center of energy advancement for quite some time. I've been at it about more than 20 years here. But I can tell you, oh, that one right, you got the bell right on. Double click on that, and you can get to the first one. But I can tell you, in my 20 years, the most exciting time, the most interesting time, the most, progress is being made right here, right now. Plus, a lot of things these folks are talking about, particularly because of this man right here, Mr. Kessel. I read both Richard, Mr. Kessel, and Mr. Chairman. This man, particularly, and others in the state have done more to advance, for example, fuel cell technology than anyone in the United States. So and that's one of the things I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of on Long Island and around the country. So we can go to the next slide. Long Island is one of the leaders because it has adopted, and New York State has adopted, a carbon target of 80% reduction by 2050. A lot of the things that we're doing here are all contributing to that. Our gas business is just as much involved in that, and here are some of the ways we're going to do that. We're going to talk about how we're going to reduce the leaks on the system that we have, the carbon benefits of expanding the system, the reforming energy vision concepts I mentioned before. We also talk about transportation, big energy user, and energy efficiency, and a new initiative that you're the first to hear about out of Stony Brook University. So we go to the next one. The gas system, like the electric system, is quite old. So the piping we have in the ground is somewhere in the order of, some of it could be 100 years old, or very, very close to that. I'm happy to say National Grid is the leading company in the United States working with the EPA on something called the Methane Challenge. And we are committing to very large reductions in what we call leak-prone pipe. You're going to see a lot of activity on Long Island, replacing the pipe, dramatically reducing the emissions of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. We developed a lot of strategies, a lot of the protocols that was been adopted by the White House within the last 2 months. Move to the next one. So, also, natural gas is also, as a replacement fuel, a low-cost fuel, but it's also the lowest carbon commonly available fuel. So we're going to be doing quite a bit, and have done quite a bit, in our current rate case to expand the system in a very proactive manner to where there was demand, and to something called a new concept called this neighborhood expansion program. We've done that first. The first sort of banner project for that was out in East Hills, basically proactively bringing the gas system there and helping folks convert. But we also know there are places where the gas system may never reach because it's just not economical. And one of the things we're going to be evaluating is the idea of providing geothermal heating equivalent for some of those neighborhoods where we just know it is not going to be economical to do so. That is one of our reforming energy vision demonstration projects. So we're looking to do that here on the island in the next year. Next one. When I said the primary thing I want to talk about today is the reforming energy vision concept in New York. All of New York's utilities, we at National Grid are the upstate electric utility. We put in 4 proposals. All of those are proceeding. But we are the first and to date only utility in the state to develop a reforming energy vision concept and proposal for the natural gas business. So we have asked for and received approval, or we're about to receive approval, for 4 demonstration projects geared around the same principles as the electric revenue program. It's engaging customers in climate change, efficiency, resiliency, and in the gas business, safety as well. Safety is number 1 when you talk about anything about energy. So the first thing we're going to do, and Long Island is going to be the first. So this is, no one's ever seen this except for you folks here. We're going to, in New York City and Long Island, we're going to have 500 of these packages deployed, where we're going to provide methane detectors. The gas industry before the CO detectors in the 80s is embracing and developing a residential methane detector. We're also going to have an automatic shut-off valve system. We're going to have a flood detector. And this is all going to provide information to customers. We're going to test this out. Provide information to customers as well as to our own control system. We're also going to test where we think we can help the electric utility or just the customer in terms of resiliency. Micro combined heat and power. You all know about combined heat and power. Very large facilities. There are technologies in Japan and Europe and some here being here developed here in the United States where you can basically generate your own, self-generate your own electricity. And it also provides backup as well. And then, of course, we're going to do that through a shared savings agreement with an outfit called SEAL, it's a Financial Energy Efficiency Programs. We also know that, that our gas system is very, very reliable, but we also know that growing it sometimes is constrained. We also know that growing it sometimes can be constrained, so we're going to have a very customer-centric gas demand response program. Don't interrupt the program, but where we think there might be a constraint somewhere in the future, we want to voluntarily, for a payment, just like you do with the electric program, have a commercial demand response program for with financial incentives for large customers to defer loads. Just like that little peak from 6 to 9 when it's really cold. Talk about the geothermal. We have a bunch of other initiatives. We're going to have new initiatives for growth here in Long Island for natural gas vehicles, distributed generation. Brentwood, our economic development programs in upstate New York are going to be brought here to Long Island. Very popular programs. And we're doing a lot for renewable gas. The facility opening in Yaphank, we have to use as a method to develop the integration standards. And that's all that. So I talked a little bit about transportation very briefly. In terms of heavy-duty vehicles, Long Island is the ground zero in the United States in terms of development of alternative vehicles. We have some of the biggest customers. Very, very grateful to particularly Long Island Bus now with Nice Bus. One of the leaders in the country early on has done this dramatic reductions in CO2 and a bunch of other facility municipalities here in Long Island. It's all thanks to the Clean Cities Organization, one of the most, but no baloney, one of the most effective Clean Cities coalitions in the United States. The Great Long Island Clean Cities Coalition. And now we have EPA RFS2 credits, full standard, which will provide a credit for those who marry up, show a physical path between the vehicle and say a landfill, a wastewater treatment plant in terms of fuel. And hydrogen vehicles are here. Market now, you're going to see Hempstead took the lead in this with their Lido Beach station. You're also going to see Toyota deploying to a subsidiary called Air Liquide hydrogen fueling station. Next. Mike mentioned the clean efficiency programs. We still have energy efficiency programs on the commercial side. Very large programs for prescriptive as well as custom programs for boilers, furnaces, any kind of custom way that's cost effective to provide energy savings. Next one, quick. Also, energy efficiency is also, we've been very, very fortunate that we worked with a couple of large government facilities.